when you want a weaker dollar and you want to incentivize manufacturing, you are going up against a globalized system that is dependent upon refining capacity around the world. So the only way to break that is creating new chains. And if you're going to create new chains, it has to start from the beginning, right? And it reduces efficiency in the production chains, right? So you have to have the offtake, and so it gets extremely bullish for those that have the underlying equities.
Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics on really an exciting time. I guess you could, well, not all these times in the financial markets are exciting, but certainly with Trump administration in the midst of a non-ideal overall financial arrangement. And you'll be seeing this. We're broadcasting this on Wednesday, recording on Tuesday, but soon we'll hear the latest from the Federal Reserve. Maybe Jerome will give commentary about his meeting with Trump. I can only imagine how much fun that was. And in the midst of this, we continue to see a gold silver rally, as well as copper, which was in the news with some new tariffs there. So, fortunately, we have our silver. Ian, I think you are my main silver and copper overlapped expert who is active in both of these markets. And excited to have you here because I know people have questions about the tariffs, how that's affecting the industry, which has a lot of similarities to silver, where, we're going to rebuild the grid, we're going to go green, but we seem to be missing some key components. So, Ian Harris of Copper Giant, welcome back on the show. It's a pleasure to see you again. It was wonderful to meet you in person at the Rick Rule Symposium. And how's everything going with you today?
Good, and nice to see you too, Chris. And it really was nice, the excitement that was in the air in Boca Raton at Rick Rule's event. Seeing the number of people just showing up and asking questions new. And because we see it, I say I always have my leading indicators of when a bull market is coming, and the first one is I start getting called by headhunters, right? And that happens months ahead, right? Because the smart money is looking for people with experience in the so I start getting a lot of calls, and then you get calls about projects. But then the cool one is obviously we just did a financing and how quickly it filled, and it was filled by very strong institutional interests. But the coolest one that I liked was had tech funds that were traditionally tech funds now looking and getting into the metals market and the metals equity market, right? Which tells you that something's going on. Money is shifting. Smart money is shifting. And then you're seeing the inklings of the retail, new retail focus at Rick Rule. Those are all the indicators. And I talked to Rick first. I said, Rick, it sure does feel like a bull's about to start. And he was like, Ian, we're in a bull. Like it's already started, right? And you could definitely say, especially in the gold equities, it's already fully started, and it feels like it started in the silver and the copper equity space. It's right there ready to launch.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. I've been seeing a similar trajectory where you were starting to get some signs a few months ago, and certainly by the time we got to Rick's show almost a month ago now, you could see that. You could see the difference. Because at the show the previous year, you already had gold and silver up, but people weren't too happy because the miners hadn't gone up. And as I know you've had to answer for the last couple of years, when are the stocks finally going to respond? And yes, we have certainly seen that start to take place now. And Ian, just to kick things off here, let's take a quick look. Again, this is pricing as of Tuesday. Gold at 33.77, and you can see it's kind of hovered around. It broke over the 3,500 a while back and stayed for the better part around 3,400. And we have silver, which got within a dime of the $40 level. I know we were talking about that last time, and a little bit lower since then in the face of a near record silver short position, which is probably unconnected. But also, we have a big move in copper that we will certainly be digging into. Here's the past 6 months. And as you can see, already
I would like
trending.
to compare. really quick, all those like a year to date or something, also to see the performance or over a last year, right? Because oh, you can see there on the bottom, right? So copper's up, COMEX futures, which is important, is up 35% or 30%. What was silver? Just flip back to silver real quick.
Silver, we got
And yeah, so saying
22%.
that's around 22 and 33%. So while gold has moved somewhat sideways for the majority of the year, you're seeing a little bit of a catch up and a build out of a super the build up of a true super cycle, right? Of where things could be going. Look, you have everything up 30 plus percent in all three commodities.
Yeah, well, and you sit there thinking like, well, how could I have known that in advance? Well, they should have watched when you were on and explained it last month. Nice timing on that. And we're going to dig into some of those dynamics in just a moment. But first, as mentioned, we have Fed meeting coming up, and there are some other things that, if you're looking, are clearly impacting that. And I'd like to play two segments. This is JD Vance, looks like about 9 months ago. And we'll see if there's anything that can be ascertained from what he says here that might have to do with some of the charts we just looked at. So here's JD.
Question, and the most important way to get people back into the labor force is to make sure that we've got good jobs and the dollar goes far enough to support a family in this country. If you want to get people back to work, you've got to make sure that when they earn a dollar, first of all, they get to keep as much of it as possible, which is why we want to lower folks' taxes.
Support that.
But second of all, a lot of people are not going to choose to work if they work 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, and they can't afford food, they can't afford to buy a house. This inflation that we've experienced under Kamala Harris's leadership, we've got to make the dollar worth a dollar again, and that's something Donald Trump and I are going to fight for every single day.
Well, part of that makes sense, although him and Trump fighting for that every single day. Here we go. Whoops, not that one. Where is, okay. So that's what they were saying 9 months ago. And here, Trump saying, strong dollar sounds good, but you make a hell of a lot more with a weaker one. So we won't belabor the point of politicians doing what politicians do, but I mean, he's basically done everything besides go to give Jerome Powell a wedgie at this point. You know, they had their meeting last week. Whether rates are cut today or it happens. I mean, we're running out of time in the second half of this year, but I think that's also impacting in addition to the supply issues. But any thoughts on this? I think has become a bit of a circus and how that's factoring into the pricing.
I think the first one that's most surprising is how well it's actually working, right? And then I think we had the Bank of America just came out saying, "Hey, this is actually working," right? And there's only one way to make this all work without inflation going up is a weaker dollar, which is also very, very, very interesting, right? So how does it all play out? And I'm not an expert on the overall macros on economics, right? What I try and focus on is, and not even just the commodities, but in the equities. What does this mean for equities? Right. That's the space I work in. And so we can talk about buying bullion, right? We can talk about buying gold or silver. It's very hard to do unless well, Friedland once said, if I was building a house today, I'd make it out of bricks of copper, right? Because that's what's really going to go through the roof. And he had one of his comments, right? But it's hard to play directly into just the commodity space. And really it's not the same leverage as the equity space, right? So what is it now? Gold's up 30%, but what's the JDXJ up is I think 60%, right? So there's a lot more, and that leverage is now starting, and it's just the beginning. So you can make, when the equity markets move, that's where people make a lot of money. And so one thing that's most interesting to me is that the scenario that this plays out is extremely bullish for the equities. And maybe I'll save it and explain why. But it starts when you want a weaker dollar and you want to incentivize manufacturing, you're going up against a globalized system that is dependent upon refining capacity around the world. So the only way to break that is creating new chains. And if you're going to create new chains, it has to start from the beginning, right? And it reduces efficiency in the production chains, right? So you have to have the offtake, and so it gets extremely bullish for those that have the underlying equities. Is the way of explaining? I can try and explain it in more detail, but um, I think that is what's playing out, and it's really starting to happen in front of our eyes. And then money flows, right? Money flows from tech, and it flows from one place, and it goes into a new place. And the cool part too that I'm starting to feel there's more excitement about the performance of the U.S. economy, and that it's oh no, it's not going to be a soft or hard landing, or maybe this is kind of a good recovery. It's like this looks like it's a boom. This looks like things could be really good, like really strong. And when we cut interest rates in that battle of what do you say, gave them a wedgie, a wedgie on, you know, but there's a lot of pressure, right? So it will happen. Just might not be at the fast speed that Trump wants it, but it's going to happen, it's only going to kind of make things even better. But I think where it flows is into it's a very bullish case for the equities, right? That's where you're going to see it as more of a manufacturing and production change focus that's going to drive the economy and drive investment.
Yeah, and you mentioned Robert Friedland in there. We'll have a link from him in just a moment. Although, just in case anyone's wondering, saying or maybe they're seeing you for the first time and saying, well, "This makes sense, but could this really be true?" Well, fortunately, JD, we can get his word for it. Because, as you mentioned, obviously you have the inflationary impact, but when you combine this other part, which you touched on, and he mentions here, let me play what he has to say here, which puts it all together.
But we don't have enough electricians, enough welders, enough people who can build things in this country, and that's got to change. So we want to make it easier. If you, whatever you want to do, if you want to go be a doctor, go be a doctor. But if you want to work with your hands and build something in the greatest country in the history of the world, we've got to make sure there are pathways available for people who want to do that. And I think that's how we get people back engaged with the workforce, is we give them the training for the kind of jobs that they want to do. It's going to make our whole country better in the process. Thank you for the question.
So there you hear him reference what we've seen play out. They're trying to reshore manufacturing. And unfortunately, we have some gaps in that because one of the other things that he didn't mention are some of the metals we will need. Although, Ian, I'm sure you saw this one
I'm going to
where,
go for one step further. If you're going to reduce the value of make a weaker dollar, right, that means you don't want it to be the trade currency. And what does that mean? What is the new trade currency? And that is also extremely bullish for gold and silver, right? And not talking, so manufacturing, in my opinion, that's production chains is extremely strong for copper and for silver, right? 60% of all silver is now in industrial usage, and that seems where that manufacturing direction is going. But if you're also not the trade currency, what is the trade currency? Gold becomes the trade currency, or things tied to gold, right? I think that all these other stable coins, et cetera, yeah, I don't know. You see, they go out, they buy a bunch of coins, but then they're also buying real assets. Real assets. They want to have real assets underpinned by real assets, and golds and silver are obviously some of the are the most critical that they want on the balance sheet. So I believe we're going to be returning to a time where gold and silver play a much more important in as a trade currency. So it's so bullish for the equities, for the commodities in the equity space.
yeah, and we're seeing that the plan basically consists of an inflationary reshoring, which fortunately is a positive, maybe not for the world, but is working in the benefit of the copper companies. Here was a link from BBC. U.S. mining billionaire welcomes Trump tariffs on copper. And they're talking about Robert Friedland, who was saying the tariffs would help reestablish the copper mining industry. Obviously, people have heard that there are new tariffs on copper, but since you're seeing and dealing with this firsthand, it would really be great to get your perspective on what has happened. Perhaps if there's any misnomers out there that people are not clear on, but anything about what that is going to mean for the industry.
So I think this is one of the most bullish pieces of news out there for. I think Friedland, he is he's going to play to his personal interest, which is because he's got Ivanhoe Electric with the Santa Cruz project in the United States, et cetera, et cetera. But I think he's dead on. And I like even taking it to the commentary we just saw. The United States wants to build a manufacturing economy, a stronger manufacturing economy, bring back manufacturing jobs. And that means building production chains, right? And if you're going to compete with China, let's just say China is the biggest competitor out there because they're the biggest manufacturer. They have secured their production chains by smelting and refining capacity. And let me just try to explain it very quickly, right? It goes like this, okay? I first control all the copper. I have the copper, and then I build the copper wire, and then I use that copper wire to build an electric motor, and then I put that electric motor inside of an electric vehicle. Boom, right? And for the longest period of time, the United States and other countries goes, well, I know we're just giving it to them, but it doesn't matter because they need us to buy it. Okay, so they're never going to mess with us, right? Oh, and they have $2 trillion in our treasuries, right? They said, but they need us because I'm the consumer. Except for today now, China is turning into a consumer. It's trying to move to a consumer economy. And so it goes, so the United States is going, well, I'm going to cause you a problem. And then they're like, okay, you're going to put a tariff. You're not going to bring in my electric vehicles. Good luck building them yourself. Where are you going to get the electric motors from? And then I'm like, oh, can you sell me some copper, please? And they're going to go, nope, not going to sell it to you. You can buy my electric vehicle, right? Because they're now in a position where you don't have the option because of the scarcity of the materials that we've all been discussing. Right. So the only way, and I'm glad somebody very intelligent has figured out the only way to build manufacturing is not to incentivize manufacturing. You have to start incentivizing the smelting and refining capacity in the United States. You need to have your own source of copper, and we hear it all the time with the rare earths, all these strategic metals. And then there's obviously the king of all metals, is I think even Friedland uses the term in the article. He did in an interview. So the king of all critical metals is copper, right? Because anything electrical involves copper, and it's biggest in terms of size and volume, right? So you need a manufacturing capacity. So if you have a deglobalized planet and everybody has this smelters here and there, and then they're getting their copper coming out of the back end, and everything's super efficient, that you just open up your computer and you say, I need 20 tons and send it to me, please. But when it becomes rare or becomes there's scarcity, or it becomes a political and national fight, which it's turning out to be because of tariffs, right? Everybody has to secure their own, right? So the efficiency of the system reduces. So not only do we need more of it, it's less efficient, right? Because you need to have your own little production chain, right? Not if he's 10% more and I'm 10% less, we balance each other out. You need your more. And it all starts with the asset. It starts with, where is that production? If you're going to build a smelter, Chris, and you would say, 20%, 50% tariff, that means I'm going to make a lot of money if I open up a smelter. So you open up the smelter, and the next thing you're going to do is go, where am I going to get the copper? Where's this copper concentrate going to come? And you're going to go, hey, Ian, do you have a copper project? Aren't you going to be building it? I'll pay you, so you send me your copper. And that's what's happening right now. They even have it today where smelters are paying for concentrate, where normally it is, I pay you to smelt my concentrate. Right? It's already happening, and it's already that fierce of a competition that is already happening, and we haven't even introduced a new capacity, right? And so that's why I say if you want to say, how do I make money at this, right? Then it is in the underlying assets that become extremely valuable in this. So I think everything is all the stars are aligning that we are going to see another true secular super cycle, and the real commodities, right? The ones that are just, the gold, the silver, the copper, that are just, that have, I also like to say, that are deposit problems. They're not just a production problem. right? Where like lithium, for example, there's plenty of lithium. It's how to produce it, right? How do you actually produce it? But there's no limit to the overall deposit, right? But where there's a scarcity of deposit and good projects, it's going to be. I mean, it's why it's cyclical. This space, but it's looking really good right now.
Yeah, I think you really summed it up well there because you have a lot of these forces building together. And here's the perfect example. MP Materials just did a deal with the US government for rare earths. And here is the part that really caught my attention. They want to help loosen China's grip on materials used to build weapons, electric vehicles, and many electronics. Now, obviously, silver was the first one that came to my mind, but now as you're sitting here describing everything you just said, sure seems like copper fits that definition as well. And Ian, is it? It also feels like we're at the point where we can sit here and we have sat here for years talking about deficits in different commodities, yet and people wonder, well, okay, that's great, but when does it matter? But eventually you get to a point where they're trying to reshore manufacturing and you have the deficit and everything else you just described. It seems like things are coming to a head in some sense in some of these markets here.
And then on top of it, I think it was Bank of America report that said you've got Alphabet or whatever the heck they're called nowadays, Google and Facebook and OpenAI and Microsoft, and then like they want to invest $70 billion in the United States, right? And so this is the other one that I like on the other layer on top of it. That's a lot of where our manufacturing is going to come from is actually AI data centers and this kind of work, right? Which is extremely intensive in metals, right? Um, that it's happening in a time where it's existential. Okay, let me also say that it's the reason why they're saying we're investing $70 billion is because it's a race, and it's a race. They feel it's life and death, right? When whoever has the smartest computer wins, right? And sooner or later, your computer's so smart, it tells you how to get even better and beat your competition even better, right? So it's existential for countries and companies, right? So again, what happens if it's life and death to them? They're seeing this as a life and death type of moment, and they go, we don't have enough power. And then they go, oh, let's just build that nuclear power plant, right? Which has literally happened. Like last year with 3 Mile Island, they said we'll just buy the power plant or one of the units that I think they were going to shut down or was shut down or whatever. Like, okay, fine. Next problem, we don't have enough silver. No problem. And the checkbook is just open because for them it's life or death. Right. It's about, and it's not a question of, oh, maybe we could be a little bit slower. It's how do we get faster?
Yep.
Right. So again, like making electric cars, you can go, it's great for the environment, rah, rah, rah. But if, hey, if it's going to take just go a little bit slower. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to spend trillions of dollars to win that race, maybe. But you are going to do it when it comes to AI and data centers. That is, and if they can make it faster, they will make it faster. That means you need more silver, they're going to make more silver. And they need more copper, they're going to give me more copper, right? Because it's existential. So it's really all kind of coming together that we're going to look back at this and in time and go, of course, it makes total sense. But you got to see it today. You got to understand how this could play out. And there's a lot of knee-jerk short-term reactions that happen in between, right? But I think the writing's on the wall on this one, that this is the moment, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great point because especially when we see what some of these technology companies are doing, and I haven't heard anyone enunciate that before, but I have a feeling the private sector might approach this differently than the public sector when things come to a head. Although, Ian, I think I did figure it out. I think the government's going to solve this one. Trump is going to have Jerome Powell at today's Fed meeting quantitatively ease the copper and silver supply. That's how they're going to do it. Although, just in case that fails, on the rare chance, Ian, I know you're one of you're the backup solution if quantitatively easing the metals doesn't work. We talked about a month ago, but perhaps just you could give people an overview of the project again and the scale of what you're looking at. And also we have some news that you guys released since then, so we can go through that as well.
I love talking the macros, but of course, I guess we should definitely talk about the company and why we believe it. But these macros are why, Copper Giant, who is now Frank Juster is the principal shareholder. We're now in the Fury Group, also started seeing it. And I think smart money started seeing it, right? And they're just moving. They're now making the move to the scenario I just painted. Um, you have a need for new production chains. You have a consolidation within the bigger copper companies because they're saying let's just buy to grow, right? We're not going to build to grow. But now that also limits the number of competitors that are actually producing copper. But they want big. They want really big, and they need it soon, right? As I guess the scenario. And so what I love about this project was we were able to get into it. It's got strong backing. It's extremely underpriced of where it is, and but have a Frank going, we know it, and the market will realize it sooner or later of how valuable of a project this is. It is a big copper porphyry. It's 600 million tons, and I say the big boys are looking for the two trillion tons. Sorry, 2 billion tons type numbers. So it's almost about a quarter of the way there. We're currently drilling to be able to prove how this is going to grow even bigger. It's near surface. It's in Colombia. We continue to drill it. We continue to drill it. We just put out results today that continue to show. And I think compare our drill results to some of the highest valued copper projects out there with one significant difference. Mine are probably 700 meters higher elevation than theirs, or closer to surface, because theirs are way high up there in the Andes Mountains, right? So being near surface, I had a conversation today. I said I'd rather have 0.3% copper near surface than 1% copper 900 meters underground, right? Because it means it can be produced cheaper, quicker, and a less operating cost, right? So it's got all this trifecta reasons of why it's an amazing project, and it's in Colombia. That's a major non-NATO ally of the United States, which is the same level as Japan or Australia. So as all these smelters get built, and Chris, you're building your smelter tomorrow, right? And you're going to go, I want a project that can actually supply the smelter, something big, right? Something that is generational, right? That can start producing and then get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's all the paintings that the Macoa project has today. It solves, it's one of the bigger solutions, right? We talked also recently, there's a project, I think the second largest project in the world is Resolution in the United States, but it's so deep underground that under the best scenario, it's going to take 7 years to start production because it takes so long to get there, right? It's such big capital. So a project like Macoa, which has the ability to start big, but not huge, right? But grow to be bigger. So it has a very nice higher grade portion of the project. We're drilling on it. We got the pathway. And I guess the other part is there's only been 6 big copper mines built in the last 10 years. And I was part of one at Mirador in Ecuador. It's why I love Macoa, why I joined Macoa. It's like all those lessons learned in a project a little bit further north. And also Ernie Mast from Cobre Panama, who's CEO of Enmet's Cobre Panama, which was one of the other ones that was built. And also recently talking about Mr. Friedland, Mark Gibson on Monday officially joined our board. He reached out to us. He used to be the COO of Ivanhoe Electric, which is the project you were just talking about. And he was the COO of Cordoba Minerals, which is the most advanced, a much smaller project, not much smaller, but about a quarter or fifth of the size of Macoa is today. But it's the most advanced copper project in Colombia. And he was going, I'm not ready to leave Colombia. I love this asset and I want to be a part of it, right? I believe in this project will become the future. Like he was a part of Santa Cruz and Cordoba, or sorry, Alacran is their project in Colombia. So the project is attracting the people that get it too, which is also very exciting. And so Mark brings a lot to the table I like to say, we're attracting not just some of the best technical people in the world, but people that have seen things get built, right? Which is also the important part.
Yeah, and I might mention that there's even a little bit more to see than the last time we talked. One thing I definitely want to get your comment on, you picked up some additional land there, and perhaps you could let folks know how that came about and what you're looking at.
So that you can read the press release, we're getting a huge piece of ground because obviously we can see the big one was when you realize that Macoa was developed, its fertile period was over 10 million years, which is huge. Which says, oh, wait a second, we might just be on the tail of a very big elephant that's going to attract a massive amount of attention to the overall district and to a generational play. But the other one was we don't want other people in here. And we've done such a good job with the community, the local government, that we don't want somebody else coming in and messing it up at a very early time and get it while before it costs an absolute fortune, right? Because I think this is a ground that's going to be extremely valuable in the near future when people start figuring out more and more people start figuring out what's really going on and some of the thesis that I played out of how valuable a project like this will become.
Well, Ian, it seems like we don't have to just guess, but that there's some evidence that the investors are seeing that because you also had your placement and was oversubscribed. And if you could just let folks know how that went, also maybe just a summary of the overall cash debt position and any of the key financials for people that would like to know more about that.
Yeah, I was obviously coming out of Boca Raton and working on a financing and feeling that momentum, but how quickly the book filled. We went up to raise 5 million and ended up upsizing to 7.5 and raising almost $8 million Canadian. But the big reason was that we were seeing a lot more institutional interest, which is, I think, you can see the smart money now deploying into copper and understanding how undervalued this is, and now having the treasury to be able to continue to execute on, I think, on an extremely sound plan, but without having to worry about where that money is coming tomorrow. So, although it was painful to do a raise at our current levels, it also was, as Frank said, Frank Juicer said, Ian, just rip off the Band-Aid. Let's just get this thing moving forward, get it in a good position. I participated, Frank participated, putting our money where our mouth is, because we truly believe that hopefully this is the moment in time where things start picking up for the valuation and some momentum is built.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense. And Ian, you could be hearing from JD anytime now. It seems like he wants to move things forward, and there were some parts he left out that fortunately you filled in. So appreciate that update. And hopefully this was helpful for everyone watching at home. And Ian, perhaps just in wrapping up here, in case there's anything else you did not mention, and also if people have questions and would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way to do so?
So I always say the best way, at the end of every press release, you have my phone number, you have Tatiana's phone number, you can go to the coppergiant.co, which is for company or Colombia, and we're actually going to be launching, in the midst of doing the true rebrand again, the new website out there. But if you want to set up, I love talking about the project, especially with existing and potential investors. Tatiana's email is always listed to reach out directly to her. But I also send me a WhatsApp. I live in Colombia, right? I like being close. I think it's important to be close to the projects if you really want them to become future mines. Is to send me a WhatsApp, right? Send me a WhatsApp message if you have any questions, right? That is the application of South America, right? So everybody uses to communicate, and I can get 1,000 emails today, but I do try and stay on top of my WhatsApp from time to time. So that's the best way to reach out.
Well,
Send me a note.
appreciate that. We'll have that all in the description field below. And Ian, again, it's nice to see so much progress even since the last time we talked. Again, it was also really nice to see you in person at the Rick Rule Symposium. And again, also nice that you had such a great response. And seems like you have a great chance to be at the right time in the right place. And always nice when things work out like that. So I say congratulations to you. And we will look forward to checking in with you again soon, my friend.
Thanks a ton, Chris. And I think you summed it all. I feel the same way. I think we've got all the pieces in place right now. We're going to go through some softness because we just did a financing, but I think if the when the shares start moving, it's going to be the last time, right? Because there's a fundamental reason why this is a company that should be worth significantly more than where it is, and it just requires a little bit of momentum to get there. The fundamentals are there, and so when it starts moving, I think it's going to be like the gates are open, and the rocket ship is launching, right? So here we are. I feel like that sitting on that rocket ship with the fuel. Now the tank of fuel is full, sitting, and we're just waiting for launch.
Well, we'll be following along, and thanks for making some time, Ian. We'll talk with you soon.
You too, Chris.